What a time to be alive, guys. We are in December 2023. And 2 minutes ago, before I started recording this video, I was playing a video game on Linux with an open source driver with an Nvidia card. Yes, Nvidia card, open source driver. You heard it well. And this is what NVK is all about. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you what is NVK and show you how to install everything to run your game on Linux with this wonderful driver. Let's get into it. As always, let's start with a little bit of context. As you certainly know, the open source driver has always existed. They've always been there for both AMD, Nvidia, and Intel. However, the Nvidia one were almost like used anymore for those who are new to this environment. If you own like any type of Nvidia card and wanted to run it with a Nouveau driver, you could run it, but you would not be able to clock up the frequency of the card. So you will have like really poor performance, even if it's working out of the box on Linux. However, the situation has changed for the Nvidia graphic card, and it really happened in 3 different phases. The first phase was when Nvidia released the Turing generation. And the way they built their card was a little bit different because they built it with what they called a new unified firmware blob. And what it really means, it means that if the dev had access to this blob, they will be able to reclock the card in a totally different way. And it will make that what was impossible before with the Nouveau driver now possible. And so this is the first phase because they actually did it, but let's not get too far there. The second phase that helped the potential open source driver for Nvidia was the fact that Nvidia released their open source version of their kernel driver. So there was still no documentation, but it was a good start to start the work for NVK. And just to make everything clear, like in terms of documentation, all those engineers who have been working on the development of Nouveau driver and Nvidia drivers, they had to do it with reverse engineering. The last one, the third phase, which also like really helps the whole like development, is the fact that Nvidia starting to providing official header for the 3D and compute hardware. So now you understand the whole situation, right? The dev taking in consideration those big 3 like phases, I would say, they were finally able to start the development of an open source alternative to the proprietary driver on Linux. This is what it happens like 1 year ago, NVK was officially announced. So you're gonna ask me like, Ermax, like what is NVK? Well, NVK is the new open source Vulkan driver for Nvidia. And if you understand it correctly, the idea of this driver is to become the equivalent counterpart of RAID-V for AMD in the Mesa stack. So what it means that in the future, when you're gonna download Linux, you're gonna have on one side RAID-V for all the AMD card, and on the other side, you're gonna have NVK. By just plugging your video card, whether it's Nvidia or AMD there, well, you're gonna have access to everything. Everything's gonna be working without the need of a proprietary driver, which is just insane. And what I think is totally crazy is the fact that the NVK announcement was released like a year ago. And I really thought it will take them years to have any type of like, you know, like result. Because those guys, they are working in the dark. Everything is like, has to be reverse engineered. So they have ton of work. They don't have a lot of documentation because we know Nvidia. But if you look at the chronology and what happened in the last 6 months, you're gonna see it's insane. So 5 months ago, NVK was officially pushed into the Mesa stack, which was the 23.3 release, as an experimental driver, advertising the fact that they support most of the Vulkan 1.0, 1.2 feature and some of the 1.3 features. So, don't want to get too technical there, but what they means that they start to have most of the Vulkan feature. It means they can run some of the less complex game, but they can still run it. And they are working on the fact that they are going there, you know? At the time, I was like, whoa, so what you're seeing is like in 7 months, you went from like stage 0 of development to landing almost all the feature of Vulkan 1.0, which is just crazy. But yes, they did it. Last month, they actually obtained the Vulkan 1.0 conformance, which means like all the feature within Vulkan 1.0, the driver can deliver. Crazy. So they went from like most of them to all of them. And now they are pushing toward 1.2 and 1.3. But when it became even more crazy is last weekend. Pierre-Loup Griffet, who is a Valve coder, like well-known Valve coder for the Steam Deck, he announced like HDR, for example, and like all those stuff. Like, this dude is solid. I'm not saying that because he's French like me, but he's solid, okay? He made some tests on his own machine. And if you look at the FPS there, it's just crazy. He announced that with the NVK driver, the open source one, he had 210 FPS in a game called Hat in Time. But with the Blob, which is a proprietary driver, the latest one, actually, he only got 165 FPS. And it's crazy to see how outperforming NVK is, and it's not even done. So guys, you know me, I had to try on my own, and man, it has been really interesting. So what are the requirements? I'm going to start with the hardware requirements. Obviously, you're going to need a computer with Linux on it, but also you're going to need an Nvidia card. But you can't have every type of Nvidia card. As I mentioned earlier, you need to have an Nvidia card which has a unified blob firmware. Those firmware, they started to be released with the Turing generation. Everything before Turing generation is not going to work with NVK. Sorry guys. I read that NVK developers are actually working on the previous generation of card, but right now it just doesn't work. Maybe it will in the future. Now, when it comes to software, you're gonna need a kernel which is gonna be able to load the GSP firmware. And the good news is like since the kernel 6.7, you have access to those firmware because they are included in the kernel. You have nothing to do. You just compile the kernel and boom, they're gonna be there. So there is other way to load those firmware, ton of different ways, but I won't be covering them in this video. I'm just giving you the easiest approach. And the easiest approach is just to get the kernel, 6.7. And again, if you want to compile the 6.7 kernel, I will recommend you to go on the Frogging Family repository on GitHub, the one from TKG, and just install it from there. It's pretty easy. And if you don't know how to do that, I'm gonna put the link of one of my videos down below, like that you go through it without any hassle. So in this video, I won't get too deep. Guys, let me know in the comment below if you want me to make a full tutorial about NVK and how to install it on Arch, because there is multiple ways to execute that. I'm just going to show you the package you need to install, and you should be good to go. If you're a little bit lost, just put a message down there and I will make a full tutorial for you guys. The package you need to install, they are available on AUR. You need to install the vulkan-nouveau-git, and you need to install the lib32-vulkan-nouveau-git. That's all. You install those two packages, you make sure your NVIDIA drivers are uninstalled, and you also make sure that your Nouveau driver is not blacklisted. When you are done with that, you're going to be able to launch any type of game with NVK. Now let's talk about performance, because I've been running multiple games, I've been making multiple tests, and I've been baffled. The first game I tried was Valheim, and Valheim run natively on Linux. They have their native version, doesn't run through Proton or Wine. The FPS were about, I would say like 1/4 or to 1/5 of the type of FPS I would have running the proprietary driver. So you're gonna say like, hey, Max, it's not that crazy. And I agree, like it's not that crazy, but you have to understand that 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, I was talking to one of my buddy called Cosmic Happiness. He came to my channel while I was streaming and he shared with me some of his results. And he told me that in less than 1 month, the performance was almost doubled on NVK. So you have to think about it this way. 1 year ago, there were no driver. 1 month ago, I would have run the same test and I would have like maybe 60 FPS. And today I run the test and I'm at like 100, 120 FPS. Do you see the gap? Do you see how crazy the gap is like becoming smaller and smaller? I was pretty baffled. Also, like the quality in terms of like vision and like what you see on screen, it's there. It's not like there is a lot of, like elements missing or something look really bad. It works. You see the image quality is the same as the one I would have on Windows or Linux with a proprietary driver, which is just crazy. Then I wanted to try another game called Stray, with a little cat. But this one, I couldn't start it. I tried many times and I couldn't start it. So I thought it was related to Proton and maybe this driver was just running game natively but not through Proton. To make sure that it was not related to Proton, I tried to run another game and I launched Overwatch 2. And guess what? Overwatch 2 was actually running on those drivers. So same type of result in terms of performance. I will be like 4 to 5 times what I will be achieving on Linux with a proprietary driver. But man, the game is there, it's working. Incredible, like just incredible. And the last one, obviously I had to try Counter-Strike 2. And there again, the game launched. Like believe it or not, but it worked. Not exactly the type of FPS I would get on Linux with a proprietary driver, but still, you can see there, it's not that bad. But in this game, it kind of like showed me a little bit more like the type of like issue related to smoothness. The quality again of the image is there, but I would say the smoothness was not there. And the last test I made was with a really demanding game called No Man's Sky. And this one doesn't run natively, it goes through Proton. I was again surprised by the fact the game started. But here in this one, I could see the limitation of the Vulkan driver in terms of like quality of the image. You could see like on this footage that not only the FPS were really low, but the quality of the landscape was not there. It did not look good at all. But even though, those results are awesome, guys. Those results are just crazy. And this is totally insane because what those engineers were able to achieve in less than a year is just like incredible. You have to think that a year and a half ago, those drivers did not even exist. Our hope to have one day open source driver on Nvidia was so low. And when we had all those announcements, I think like the majority of us were like, oh yeah, it's gonna be ready in like 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, because we know the amount of work is just crazy. But guess what? You just have to install 2 packages. Everything is already included in Mesa. And the performance, even if it's not the best, you can see that the quality of the image is there. There is obviously some work to do in terms of compliance to have, everything look as it's supposed to look. But man, like, we are 1 year in from scratch. It's just, I don't know, it's just crazy to me. And if you just open your mind a little bit and start to look at the bigger picture, you start to realize how big it could be for gaming on Linux. Because as I mentioned, like 1 or 2 videos before, one of the main roadblock was Nvidia, because most of the user, when they install like Linux, they don't want to go through the hassle of installing the driver. And I get it. Proprietary driver can be a pain. So there is some good scripts that exist. There is some way to go around, but it's not as like seamless as the way like AMD or even Intel works on Linux. But with this open source driver, this could be insane. That's the first one. And the second one I really want to mention here is the fact that when you look at AMD and how crazy the community has been towards the development of the AMD like open source driver, it kind of shows that the model of open source is way faster than the model of closed source. And what I'm trying to explain here is like the community was able to solve issue faster than AMD engineer could ever solve. And this is just crazy, because what it means that if the community has access to this driver, and they will, most of the issue related to Nvidia might be corrected faster by the community than the actual Nvidia dev. Like, think how crazy it could be. And the last point, obviously, is about, the market size. We know that most of the users right now, they are running Nvidia card, the gamer. And man, like, this NVK driver could be the solution for most of them to switch from Windows to Linux. So yeah, man, I know for some of you guys are gonna be like, oh yeah, but those drivers, they don't run as fast as the proprietary driver, blah, blah, blah. Give them 6 months to 1 year more. Just give them this amount of time and you will see. You might be surprised by this team of drivers. They are just crazy. And now they almost like finished all the work related to the dev and the compliance toward Vulkan. They might have like more time to focus on performance. And dude, we are getting there faster than we all think. And it's really good news for Linux and the Linux community, guys. Guys, thanks again for watching. Don't hesitate to try it. Let me know in the comment below if you have any type of issue related to the installation of those drivers. I can make a full dedicated video towards making it work on Arch. And I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to also thank all the members that helped me financially to do those videos. Guys, thank you very much. Thanks for your support. Really, really appreciate it. And I guess I will see you in the next one. Bisous, bisous.